sit back, relax, and let's have a chapter chat. I'm your host, Jessica Foster, and so glad that you're here with us because we have author Jennifer Moorman here with us today, all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, to talk about her latest release. Thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me today.
And your latest release is The Charmed Library, and this is a phenomenal book. How long did it take you to write The Charmed Library? Was this something that had been in your head for a while?
It definitely had been in my head for a while, so writing it actually came pretty quickly. I want to say maybe 3 months I finished the first draft, so that would be just the rough draft. So it was probably the second fastest book I've written.
Tell me a little bit about The Charmed Library. Like, for people who haven't read it yet, what's the synopsis?
So, The Charm Library is a story of an assistant librarian named Stella, and she has had to take over the library for just what she thinks is a couple of days because the head librarian has taken a leave of absence. And Stella finds strange characters wandering around the library after hours. And one of them introduces himself as her first fictional crush. And she doesn't believe it's true, but really what she finds out is that there is magic hidden in this library, and it gives the librarian the ability to bring fictional characters out of their books, including her crush.
So, what I loved about this is that I think that there's magic in libraries all the time.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, I love a library. I love books. And this would fall into the genre of magical realism. And is this a genre that you love?
I do. I really love it. And I think I've loved it my whole life. I just didn't realize what it was until I became an author and we were talking about where your book fits. But I love looking for the magic everywhere.
Is it hard to write magical realism?
It's not for me. I really find that that's one of the easiest parts of it for me is because I'm always looking for the magic and it's easy for me to spot it. And so when I'm putting it in my books, it's easy for me to imagine my characters having enhanced or special abilities. It's easy for me to picture a library being enchanted.
So, I was actually introduced to magical realism, I guess a couple of years ago. I'd never read any magical realism. And then I fell in love with the genre. I love historical fiction a lot. And then I was like, ooh, I really like this a lot too, because I don't know, it reminds me a little bit of fairy tales when you were a
Yeah.
child.
Yes, exactly. Because it does have whimsy and it has that enchantment, and not everything is enchanted, but there's some element or a couple of elements in the story that are. So it's a great comparison to fairy tale.
Let's talk a little bit about your journey to becoming an author and having all of these wonderful releases.
My goodness. So that's a longer journey, but actually, I started out my first professional career as a singer. I traveled all over the country with a band. I loved it. And then I had a career shift, and then I became a senior editor in publishing for many, many years. And then ultimately, that brought me here.
How did you go from being a singer to getting into this world? Because that does seem like quite a shift.
It does, but, I have always, always loved writing, so I've been writing my whole life. I just hadn't found that that was gonna be a career that I could possibly have yet, and so from singing, that's also a creative, energetic output for me, and still love music, and I was doing a lot of songwriting, and so it's not that far of a shift in that you're still creating something that you love, but I never stopped writing. So even when I was little, all the way through college and all the way up until now, it's really a natural transition for me. It just took me a while to find my place with it.
Well, and one thing that I think would be different is because when you are an entertainer, you're getting that instant feedback from
Oh, yeah.
people. And then when you're writing a book, you're not getting instant feedback.
You're not. That is instant gratification when you're on a stage and you can really see the people. But I tell you where that instant gratification, it's not really instant, but where it comes from after you've written a book is when I go on book tour and I get to directly connect with the readers. You can just see it. You have this instant connection with them talking about books and then talking about your book, and that is really such a gratifying moment.
When you talk to your readers in person and they tell you that "Oh, I related to this character," or "You made me feel this way." I'm sure that really does just feed your soul.
It does, because, I find myself in stories too. When I'm reading a book and I see myself reflected back to me, it's magical. Let's use that word again. And so when I can connect with a reader over something that I actually created, it's so heart filling.
Some authors, they like to plan things out. They outline things, and then others, they fly by the seat of their pants. So which
Right.
category do you fall into?
I'm I'm an outliner, but it's different in that I write a really long summary of my book. It's about 4 to 5,000 words long, maybe even longer. It just depends on the story, but it can be 12, 14, 17 pages long, and it spoils the entire story. So this is also why writing the Charm Library happened so quickly, is because I really had an entire blueprint of the story, and when I sat down to write it, I knew exactly where I was going.
And I think the outline is very helpful for a lot of
Mhm.
people because they don't get lost. Like they don't forget about a
Right.
character, or it can help with those plot holes too.
For sure. And I think for me, it keeps you from writing on a tangent or writing something about the story that you may love, backstory or a character depth that you really don't need. And so it keeps me on track, but it still allows me to write organically. It's not separated into chapters when I'm writing the summary. So I can still say, oh, I need to get from here to there. How do I want to do that?
Yeah. As a journalist, we have to deal in facts all the time, you know? And so with magical realism, it gives you a little bit of an escape.
It's definitely fun, and I love turning the world in, like, changing the perspective of it so that, like you already mentioned, how magical a library feels. Well, it's not so much of a leap for you to go into a library and it is actually enchanted, and that just feels like a fun adventure to take.
And what's been the response to the book so far when you've been talking to readers?
Well, I mean, is it too much to say that they have loved it? They do love it, and it's a fun story that's what I hear a lot, is that they love being around the books, they love the characters that come to life in the book, and they just have the same dream that I do of being in a library or meeting your favorite characters in real life, and it's just such a fun adventure story, but it also has a lot of heart, and so they can see themselves in Stella and just kinda share that dream with her.
I notice trends a lot in publishing, and I've seen a lot of writers writing about books and have their settings in libraries, that sort of things, because the readers love it.
Yes, I agree, and I do too. I hadn't thought about that when we started moving this book through production, how much people were gonna love the book aspect. But it makes sense to me now, after the fact, because I love reading a story about a bookshop or a writer even, so I do see that trend that you're talking about now too, because I think that readers are your first people that come to it, and they can totally relate.
And something that's so fun to see in a world where we're just immersed with technology and screens, people are really coming back to the page.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope they never leave the page, right?
Right. Yes. I'm just seeing that people, reading it's trending, people, the younger
Mhm.
people too. And that is exciting to see.
It is, and just the tactile aspect of having a book in your hand. Even if you have an e-reader, you're holding something and you're really disappearing into a story, and that is, no matter what story it is, that is really magical to me as well. Just that you can find yourself there, you can lose yourself there, you can take an adventure, and I love that people are constantly, and maybe even more so, embracing reading.
And we are both Southern girls. We have something in common because we both grew up in Georgia. And how has that Southern influenced your writing?
I think it's automatic. I'm very much a Southern girl at my heart. I know what it's like to grow up in a small town, and I know there's something really beautiful about having a community and having people who know you. I know there's the funny aspect of you don't want everybody to know what you're doing in a small town, but there's also a lot of wonderful things about a small town. And so it feels very natural for me to place my stories in the South because it's such a part of me.
Well, and something that we're familiar with, it's easy to write about, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
And I've also found that people who aren't from the South are so intrigued by Southern culture too, and I think that they enjoy reading about it.
I do too. I really do because I mean, every, section of the country is unique, but there's just something really compelling and captivating and maybe humorous about the South and how quirky we are and just some things that we do that might be very different from, how they do things. And also, I think there's a cozy element to being in the South that people can relate to.
Ooh, yeah, I like that cozy element. It's so true, it really is.
And it's
Because
warm.
yes, I know. I've talked to a lot of authors on the podcast during the winter, and they're like, "Yeah, we're snowed in right now." And I'm like, "Ooh, in Florida, we walked on the beach yesterday and it was beautiful."
Yeah,
Not trying to rub it in or anything.
right.
Yeah. We talked about the joys of writing and how it just has come naturally for you. But are there any challenges that you would say that you've run into?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think it's very natural for you as an author or a writer or a creative person to have moments where you're not sure if it's okay. Like, what am I doing? Is this story any good? Is anybody going to like it? And just kind of overcoming your own insecurities and overcoming yourself, I think is very common. And just having people around you, though, that help support you and kind of talk you back out of that black hole that you might be in. And then I think the business aspect of anything can have its own challenges is that this is a creative endeavor. It comes a lot from the heart. And you also have to parallel and work in tandem with the business aspect, and that's not always the easiest thing, but I'm very intentional about finding the fun in the business too.
And let's talk a little bit more about the business aspect of it. For someone who's not familiar with how the publishing industry works, how would you describe that?
Oh my goodness, well, it's a machine. It's a corporation, and there are a lot of people working there who work really, really hard, and they're trying their best to do everything they can to support every single author. But there's a lot of authors, and there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of emails to answer. And I think that as an author, it's okay to ask for things, ask for help, be really connected with your publishing group. If you're not, I think you can feel very siloed as an author and unsure of how to use your team, how to get help when you need it. And maybe there is a misconception that your publisher is going to do everything for you and you're just going to sit there and watch your book, sell thousands of copies. But really, it's a partnership. And so I think if you're not aware of that, you can have a lot of struggles and challenges working within the industry.
And you enjoy talking about your book, promoting your book, and talking to readers. So I guess that's another part that just kind of comes natural, being a former entertainer and just liking being with people.
You know, at first I was really a lot shyer about it. However, when you look at the people that you're talking to, they're just people just like you. They love books, they love reading. It really takes a lot of that pressure and that I wouldn't say it's anxiety, but it takes a lot of that away because you're like, hey, we're just having a conversation. This is fun. And I just look at those events now as just let's go in there and have a really great time and talk to wonderful people about something I love.
So we started a chapter chat book club, and we're now in our fourth year, which is just so hard to imagine. And I have just grown to love the people that come month after month to our book club. You just become like a little family.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. And it's an instant connection, like we talked about, because you're already there because you love the same thing. You love books. And it does, it creates its own community, like the reading community and the author community that I love being a part of it. And they just embrace you. And it makes it so much more fulfilling of a journey.
Is there a particular book that just really sticks with you that you've written where you would say it's your favorite? I know a lot of authors say, my favorite is my latest book, but is there one that really sticks with you?
It's really hard to pick a favorite because, they're all your children. But The Baker's Man is the first book that I ever wrote, like completely finished a book because I did a lot of unfinished writing before that. And so it's really special to me in that it kickstarted this belief in myself that I could do this, that I loved writing stories, that I could finish a book.
And there's something about that that first one, right? I mean, are you kind of like, I'm on this journey, and then all of a sudden you feel like you've made it?
Yeah. Well, you finished it. Writing a book is a huge accomplishment. And I don't know that all the writers really sit back and say, wow, I just finished a book. They're on to the next thing. But it is just a massive thing. And for me, like I said, I'd been writing a bunch of stuff I never finished. And so to actually put out a book, I thought, wow, I can do this.
Yeah. And how was it getting that first publishing deal?
Oh, it took about 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because
Wow.
I didn't try for one for a long time. I actually tried to find an agent for a couple of years and everybody said no. And so then I started putting books out myself independently. And I did that about 8 years before I thought, "You know what? I'm gonna try a new thing. I'm gonna look for an agent and I'm gonna try to get a traditional deal." So really it was 10 years later after putting out my very first book that I got the traditional deal. So that's my journey. Does it take everybody that long? I wasn't actually trying for all 10 years, but that's just what happened, how it happened for me. So I think for me, it didn't feel hard. But if you think about how much time it took me to get there, it probably was.
And you look back now and you're like, how could the agent say no to you, Jennifer? How in the world?
Oh, I didn't know what I was doing.
Right. But everyone has to start somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm glad that you did end up in this space that you're in because the world is better by having your art in it.
Thank you. I believe that of all the art. I think it's everyone has their unique voice, and it just brings so much more to our world when we share it.
What do you hope that readers get out of the Charmed Library?
Oh, goodness. Well, I hope that they have a great time, that they see that there is magic everywhere, that libraries are a beautiful place, but also the stories that we tell, the stories that we share are so important to our lives and to all the lives around us. And just that they finish the book feeling hopeful and happy and uplifted.
Well, that's exactly what this book did for me and made me feel hopeful and uplifted. So you accomplished your goal with that. Yeah. Now, when you're not writing, what do you like to do?
Oh, goodness. I love to bake. I love to cook. I love to garden. I love to be outside. I really enjoy when the weather is nice to get outside and do things, but I mean, I love hanging out with my husband.
Right. That's a good thing.
But I really love it is. I really love creating in general, no matter what that might be. I like to paint sometimes, but really even gardening to me feels like a creative endeavor.
So, like we talked about, you grew up in Georgia, and how did you end up in Nashville? Was it your music career that took you to Nashville?
It was the music. So I started my college career in a music degree, and that transferred me up here to Nashville area. And so I finished out my college degree here. And so that's really how I ended up here. And then I stayed because I love it. I mean, I really do love Nashville. I love the big city feel, but the small town feel. Some people are like, it's not small, but it's not huge. And it doesn't take you long to get out of the city and to get into green space. And it just has so many of the things that I love. And it does actually get warm. We do have 4 seasons as well. It will get cold, but, I love it here.
It is a fantastic city. I enjoy visiting it. It really is great.
It is, and there's so much to do. There's music and sports and theater and food, and it doesn't take you long to get into the city to experience all that, and it's so easy for me to be outside of the city, which I prefer, to be around trees and nature.
Where do you typically do most of your writing? Since you like to be outside, do you go outside to write?
I do in that short window of time when it's tolerable, right? Because we grew up in the South, it's very humid, and it'll get, intolerably hot outside to just be sitting. So when those seasons happen, I'll write inside. I don't write at a desk. I'll just write anywhere. I just move around the house. But if it's beautiful outside, I love to be out there and writing. And when I'm traveling, I just write anywhere. I've written in an airport. I'll write on vacation if I want to, just anywhere. I'm very, very flexible for writing space.
I like that. Some authors that I've talked to, they have a dedicated time of day where they write, or there's a specific spot that they write in. Is there a specific day or time that you try to write?
I generally write in the mornings because I feel more alert. I'm definitely an early bird and I go to bed kind of early. So for me, the morning time is wonderful and early afternoon. And then probably by 4 o'clock, I would say that I'm going to close down writing because I need to relax my brain and maybe just do some other things. But that feels like a full day for me. So it's not specific writing time, but really I'm going to be a morning writer.
So for years and years, I anchored a morning show. And so I was an early riser, but to the extreme because you're really waking up in the middle of the
Yeah.
night when you have to do the morning show. And this last year, I transitioned into, I would say, the most normal schedule you can have in the TV news industry. I anchor the 5 and 6 p.m. news now. And I did not realize how sleep deprived I was,
I
and
bet.
it was almost like I now have turned into a night owl because when I get off after the 6 p.m. news, then my brain is still going,
Hmm.
and I'm like, "Wow, how in the world did I shift like that so
Yeah.
much?"
It's true, and when I was in the music industry, I was more like what you are now. Everything's happening at nighttime, and I would be up, late at night performing or, late-ish, and I would you can't go right to bed, right? Because 'Cause you're like you said, your brain is wired and you're kind of energized, and so then I would sleep in a little bit more in the mornings, but now I'm thinking, "Wow, how did I do that? How did I stay up so late?"
Well, it just shows you how our life
Mhm.
has different seasons, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And we
it definitely
evolve.
does.
We evolve over
Mhm.
time.
Thank goodness.
Right, that's true, that's true. You talked about, loving spending time with your husband. Is family very important to you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So the rest of my family still lives in Georgia, but we really make a point to see each other as often as we can. And we spend holidays together. We go on family vacations every year, but it is very important to me. I mean, he's also my best friend. And so he's so supportive of my career, all the careers that I've had. And it's just we have a lot of fun together. And even with my own family, I've got two brothers and a sister. We just enjoy being together.
And is your husband the first one that reads your books?
No. He actually doesn't read them for the most part until they're printed.
Really?
I mean, that sounds like really far off. I mean, there's sometimes I'll send him a first chapter and I ask, "Hey, does this sound good?" But really, I wait till it's really done because he's not a huge reader. And so to have him go through my whole manuscript before it's published feels like maybe that's not the best use of his time.
Right.
And I have some other people that'll read it first.
Nice. That's really nice. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about you or about your
Oh,
writing process?
the other thing I think is really fun to share is that I've also written children's books.
Yes.
So I've written 2 strawberry shortcake board books, and I have a strawberry shortcake picture illustrated book coming out in June, and then I have my own children's book coming out in August. And that is a really fun adventure as well. And it's not too far removed from the magical books I write because when you put yourself into that childlike wonder and just in that little girl heart, it's so close to what I do with my adult writing, but it's really, really fun.
I love that you can shift between those. As far as timelines for writing, like your adult novels and then the children's books, is
Mhm.
there a big time difference in how long that takes?
Oh, for sure. The children's books, especially the Strawberry Shortcake books, it's very fast. I mean, like, very fast because you're normally writing it in less than a month, and it doesn't take that long because there's just not that many words. I wanna say in the children's book, the illustrated one, it may be 800 words, whereas my novel's 90,000. So it's, hugely different, but they're fun also because of that, because they're quick. Now, it's not easy to write a children's book in that you really every word, because there's only 800, every word has to belong on that page on purpose, and you can't waste any of the space. So there's a challenge of making something very, very short versus the long novel, which I feel like you have a lot more flexibility to, be a little more wordy. But it's definitely a faster turnaround for books and for the production of those books because they're just not as involved in the content as the long novels.
And as far as the publishing process for both,
Mhm.
are the publishers that you work with, are they different in each of those spaces?
Not really. It really functions very similarly. It's just that the market that they're working with is going to be incredibly different versus the children's books and the magical realism novels. But the way that it functions, the way that we do the editorial, the way the cover design works, the way the illustrations work, which of course my full length novels don't have illustrations, but it's very, very similar in the process. And because I was a senior editor for so long, I'm so familiar with that process even though they may have some slight differences, it all feels very much the same process to me.
And so glad that you got the Charmed Library across the finish line because
Yeah.
it is such a fun read and it's out now. So we encourage everyone to, hey, go out, get a copy of the Charmed Library, read along with us, and experience the magic. Because, Jennifer, you are such a talent and such a joy to talk with.
Thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation.
Yes, happy reading, everyone.
You've been listening to Chapter Chat. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.